Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Chad from Greyscalegorilla. Welcome to another GSG show. I've got a special guest. You may remember this guy from a recent tutorial. Mr. Sean Astrom is with me.
What's up, guys?
So you're probably wondering, we just did one of these, and we just did a tutorial, and we just did a podcast. What the hell are we here for? Well, Arnold GPU was just announced today, and so we thought we'd jump in and do a little podcast about it because Sean and I have actually been beta testing this thing forever. And well, for me, it's been a really long time. For you, not quite as long.
Yeah, you've had it for like a year.
Yeah, I've been like sitting on this thing for a really long time. And so, yeah, we thought we would jump on here and sort of just like tell everybody what our thoughts are about it and sort of discuss it between the two of us because we're both Arnold users. I know you also use Corona. Do you use Redshift too? I can't remember.
I was a bunch about a year ago, and then I rebuilt my machine to the Threadripper system, and I actually just decided to get one graphics card and focus on kind of CPU stuff for a little while.
Dude, you went all in, all in.
I did, but I still use it. Yeah, I haven't been using it as much, but yeah, primarily it's been Arnold.
So I kind of dabble in all of them really, but obviously Arnold has if you know me, Arnold has a special place in my heart because of the flexibility, the tools, everything is just so good. The plugin is great, but I also use Redshift a lot, and occasionally I use Octane. But Arnold GPU is out as of today, being Monday, March 18th, 2019. And it's, I guess, around the graphics conference, which is, tell me, that's GTC, right? Is that what it's called?
I think so.
I know
yeah.
so little about gaming. It's like, is it around gaming? I don't even know.
I don't know. My brain's all been in NAB stuff lately. So
I know, me too. And yeah, that's coming up, which is going to be fantastic. But all right, let's get down to brass tacks here. So out of San Francisco this morning, Arnold Autodesk released a teaser video, which I have a bunch of my captures in there actually, of Arnold GPU. And it's hit the internet by storm, and everybody's like freaking out, and everybody's like, oh man, it's been so long. And it has been long. I can remember being at SIGGRAPH or NAB, I forget, like 2 years ago, and being frustrated with just like, why isn't this thing out yet? Why can't I get my hands on it? Why haven't I been able to touch it? Right? I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah. No, for sure. But I think it also kind of, shows that it's not easy to develop this stuff. Like, of course, like with Redshift, that was built from the ground up as a GPU renderer. But like, I don't know, there's really no other engines. I guess V-Ray has a CPU and GPU component, but like they don't really play beautifully together. And what they're trying to do by like making them like a one-to-one, you switch from CPU to GPU, like I don't think there are any engines that do that right now. So
yeah, the only one that sort of comes even close would probably be RenderMan with XPU, and I have not seen that in person. But I mean, obviously, that's not really even not much of a option for our market because it's just not around. So yeah, this is the first time that I've seen it done at this scale, meaning that it is across all DCCs, Maya, Arnold, anywhere that Arnold, my phone's gone off, is supported, it will work. Obviously, it's NVIDIA only because it's developed on the optics platform, which is going to utilize the new Turing architecture in the RTX cards. So if you're rocking a 2080 Ti like me, I've got two of those. It's fantastic. If you're doing, it'll still work on the GeForce 1080 Ti's and whatnot. It's just going to be more optimized to run on the RTX cards. You definitely. What's weird to me is that I noticed that in a lot of their early sort of marketing and leaks and just like talking about, not even leaks, but like videos showing them using it at their events, Autodesk, they were always pushing the Quadro cards. I noticed they were like only demoing it on Quadro cards. And I went to one of the events and I talked to one of the guys at the booth, and I was like, well, what's the deal? Like, because I know I can run it on a GeForce card. And I don't know if it was a rep from Nvidia or what, but he was like trying to do a hard sell on me for this expensive Quadro card that I'm like, dude, like I don't need that. I'm not doing Avengers. I
Right.
don't have like
Yeah.
terabytes of data.
Right. You
It's
don't need the
insane.
48 gig like $20,000 Quattro card.
No, and they're so expensive. They're insanely expensive.
Yeah, for
But no,
sure.
I bought, so I got the two 2080 Ti's when I got this machine. If you're curious about our specs of the GSG machines, you can go to our resources page on our site and see the builds that we have. Actually, Sean was the one that recommended this build, so he has some skin in this game without even really remembering it. I'm sure when I don't know if you remember, you gave me the specs. But did you
Yeah, for
know?
sure.
But did you know that? I don't even know if I told you this, but I got the NV link. Did I tell you that?
Yeah, yeah. No, I remember you grabbed that thing because it was only really recently till multi GPU was working, right? With the
Oh my
Arnold
god.
GPU.
Yeah. So
So
maybe we should
it was
rewind.
running. Yeah, it was running on like one GPU for a good while there, which I understand. I'm sure they were like really trying to squash any bugs that they found on working on one GPU before they implemented two, so it didn't, add to the complexity of troubleshooting all that stuff. But yeah, but yeah, it sounds like you got that link, and then I
Yeah.
only have one card right now, so I'm kind of like a little envious. I probably have to go get
Yeah,
another
you're
one.
gonna have to definitely beef that up, dude. But yeah, I got the
Yeah,
22080 Ti's, and then like we early on in the beta, multi GPU was not even supported, so you had to run everything off a single GPU, which made it really painful and like so, like oh man, I don't even know if this thing's even gonna have legs because it's so slow. One GPU, blah blah blah. Well,
right, right.
I would say like halfway, not that long ago actually, maybe about 4 or 5 months ago, the beta build started getting better and better. And not that long ago, they added multi GPU support, plus they added NVLink support, which for those of you like myself who are not like computer part savvy, I didn't know what NVLink was, but I'll break it down in my really super layman terms. What NVLink is, it's a faster connection between your two GPUs or more than two GPUs, and it allows them to share memory. So you
Yeah,
get the full memory of the card as opposed to, I don't know, I'm not even going to speak to it because I'll get it wrong, but it was like $90 to buy this NV Link for my cards. And I was like, and I'm going to get better throughput. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, done, dude. I'll go buy that right
yeah,
now. I'll go
yeah.
get that.
Well, and so
But
in theory now, does that mean that so you got two 1080s with 11 gigs,
2080 Ti's.
the 2080s, the TIs. So with the 11 gigs with the NV Link, does that mean you with Arnold can you utilize 22 gigs of memory?
I believe so. I haven't
Okay.
obviously I'm not doing Avengers, so like I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I've never hit the
I think
limit.
that's yeah, I think that's what's going on, but I'm not 100% sure either. But I think I know with Octane even, I think they were you were limited to your whatever card had the most amount of memory. But I don't even know if that's since changed. But that was kind of a big bottleneck with the GPU stuff was the memory on the cards, but it
Right.
seems to be getting much better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like I said, I'm not pushing ridiculously heavy scenes. If you're doing like film quality assets and whatnot, then maybe the quadro cards make a lot more sense. But for me,
Sure.
it definitely didn't make any sense, so that wasn't an option for me. But yeah, I gotta say though, like for those of you sort of wondering about Arnold GPU, we're gonna answer some of these really, I think, probably the questions that are on your mind most, which is it as fast as Octane, Redshift, Cycles, what have you? And then
Right.
what are
Right.
the differences and what are the hangups? Um, so I guess Sean, why don't you start with what have you liked about it and what surprised you? I guess.
For sure. Well, yeah, no, because I only have been using it for the last like month or so, maybe even month and a half. And I was shocked at how fast the IPR is, at least for me when I can, because I've been a CPU kind of hardcore guy. It's one of the reasons I love Corona, like CPU based, and it's still really, really fast, especially if you have a Threadripper 32 core processor. But obviously Arnold is very fast as well on that chip. But so with my 2080 Ti, the IPR felt almost identical to what I was getting with my Threadripper, which is like kind of shocking to me. And so if I, in theory, grab one more card, I'm looking at, doubling the performance as easy as just popping in a new card. But yeah, man, the IPR is really responsive, which is awesome because that's obviously a huge thing. And then just how well the material system seems to be working. Like I threw together a couple quick shaders and everything was just kind of working. I was like, sweet. And then I'm a big geek for the C4D noises, and I plug those in, and those don't work technically right now procedurally, but I was kind of surprised to see them working in the displacement channel. So I plugged in.
They work, dude. They work.
Well, I don't think they work as a shader, but like, if you plug them into the like a diffuse channel, but
I could have swore they did. They don't.
Well,
Maybe we should jump in and test it right now.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I was playing around with it about a week ago, and it was like seeing because they put it out an update. But I don't know because the C4D noises are so specific to Cinema 4D. Of course, the Arnold noises work. So all the Arnold shaders, like at least I'd say 80% of them maybe right now are all working.
Yeah, 70. Not quite. Yeah, 70s probably.
Yeah, the really like important ones, like I feel like are noises, and I think they got curvature working.
Yeah, curvature, triplanar. What else? Jitter is working. For those of you that don't know what jitter is, it is a node that you can plug in a texture into, and it will randomize hue, gain, things like that across multiple copies or wherever that shader is being used. It's great for mixing up stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like the variation shader, right? In cinema.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's working. Yeah, so a lot of the major things that was huge for me. Like AO is working now, but in the beginning, when none of that stuff was working and I was testing, it was so painful to like try to like because I couldn't like open up any old scenes because everything's using triplanar or it's using curvature or
right,
and you're just kind of like oh. But then when I did everyday material collection, that just works because everything's bitmap based. So it was like, oh, okay, this is cool. Like now I can actually start testing this thing pretty hardcore. But yeah, it's that's working. I believe atmospheric lights are working. Initial support for volumes. What else?
No, I was definitely just impressed. It seemed like everything like was working. It didn't feel like, it's still beta for sure, but like I was expecting like only like 20% of things working, and the percentage seems a lot higher. Like I did a little test with X particles too, and that was like working like out of the box. I'm like, okay, but I only did like super basic. I just applied, Arnold tag to my X particles emitter and just had some simple particles going, but it rendered really fast. Like I was impressed with the particle, render time I was getting using X particles, but quote the scene was very simple, so I didn't do anything too complex.
Yeah, I have not tested XP yet. I need to do that, but I've just been kind of focusing on other stuff right now, and I think I tested random walk pretty extensively, and some of those captures are in their promo video. The weird scan head dude. So yeah, I've just been playing around with the subsurface and a lot of the multi-instance clone stuff and just general stuff, curvature stuff like that, GI testing. But yeah, it's definitely, I have seen it, the beta like get significantly better over the past, I'd say month, 2 months. They've been cranking out builds more frequently, whereas in the beginning you could tell they were still trying to like figure out how this was all going to work, and the builds weren't like infrequent, but they were not weekly by any means, and it did take a while. But I guess that's getting back to what you said, it's like when you're starting from scratch on a different platform that the renderer was not built for, you're going to have challenges.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and they've kind of made quite a commitment to like making this completely optimized on NVIDIA cards, like, but especially they're using all the optics tech, which I just saw in the release notes here. It says updated optics 6, which is kind of improves denoising speed, memory consumption is better, and it's all on the Turing hardware. So the fact that they're like working so closely with NVIDIA, and I know even when you guys get the beta, you have to make sure you're kind of running the latest drivers and all that stuff. Like it won't even work on older drivers. So that's
they're
pretty
working
interesting.
hand in hand with NVIDIA, and I will say that the new optics denoising is much better. It's much faster. It gives much more predictable results. There are a few times where you can make it get wonky and it sort of looks really weird, but if you're just doing like some look dev and you're just trying to like figure something out real quick, I turn it on. Like I actually use it in the IPR. I don't know if you do or not, but
yeah, I've played with it a little bit, but yeah, it seems like textures like really quickly just like appear. Like it cleans up things quite nice. So when you're doing look dev, it's awesome.
all right, yeah. So what surprised you besides you mentioned the IPR speed and the just the interaction of it, but like what you must have had some preconceived notions. You're pretty new to the betas. Like, what did it meet, or was it below expectations, or how did it turn out when you opened it up for the first time?
I love just hopping into the render settings and being like thinking like you have to change like 5 different things, like, but you just hop into the system tab and you go render device over to GPU, and there you go.
Right.
So that's sweet. I mean, which I don't know. I feel like when I was using V-Ray a little bit more, like it seemed like there were multiple steps to get V-Ray RT working, and then it like didn't really work. Like it was it was like drastically slower than CPU. So I was kind of expecting like that same kind of thing. Like, okay, I got one graphics card in here, compared to my Threadripper, this thing's probably gonna feel pretty slow. But then when I saw it like, like working like at a reasonably fast speed, I was like, uh-oh, I guess I'm gonna have to go get a couple more cards.
You can actually hear your money, see your money like flying
Yeah,
out of your wallet. Yeah.
exactly.
I mean,
But
so
like
explain that to people because I don't think people understand how you go from CPU to GPU.
it's so simple. I mean, you literally, so you hop into your render settings, make sure Arnold's obviously there, and then there you have your system tab, at least in Cinema's UI, and then under device selection, there's a render device option, which I don't know if, I guess device selection's probably not within the current build of Arnold, public CPU Arnold. So that's kind of a new thing. And then you just kind of select you switch over to GPU, and and then I only have, since I have the one card, I don't think it's giving me an option here to disable one, but maybe you can
Yeah.
say like you can disable one probably and use the other for something else. Maybe if you want to, like, if you're doing some live streaming and you got Arnold GPU running in the background.
Yeah, that is handy. Like you can essentially have it choose any available GPU, or you can actually turn on and off which GPUs you want to use. You can also limit the texture size right there as well. So
Oh,
if
right.
if
Yeah.
you want to limit your texture size, if you have limited memory and you're just using the card for look dev or whatever, then you can just like knock that way down so you're not hitting any memory limitations. The other thing that really kind of the very first time I used it, I was sort of confused by is everything is going through camera AA. So that's
Right.
something that if you're familiar with Arnold, you have all kinds of different samples. You've got camera A, diffuse, specular, all that sort of thing. And so one of the things that was like kind of weird for me was like, oh, so everything goes through camera AA. Oh, I get it. Okay. So it really you basically can just turn down all the other samples to zero and just crank your camera A up to like I don't know, for me it's like between 10 and 20 depending on what I'm doing. Now it also works with the
Yeah.
adaptive, which is nice because you can use the adaptive sampling to throw more camera AA into parts of the frame that need it. Um, but yeah, that was a bit like, what? I don't get it. I thought I would just switch to GPU and it would look exactly like my CPU. No, you do have to change how you're allocating samples, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
for sure. Which, like ultimately that might be a pretty awesome way to work. Like, obviously you can get nice improvements in your render times by really dialing in the samples, like, but if these GPUs don't care so much and you just have this like global slider for like sample quality, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's kind of like the holy grail of like render engines, right? You just want to be able to like turn it on, like it's noisy, I need a little less noisy, I'm just going to crank that slider up. So
Yeah, if it's fast, that's great.
yeah, if exactly, if it
If it's
remains
not fast,
quick,
then you're like, this
yeah.
sucks.
If it's
Yeah.
exponentially slower, then that's tricky. But and I don't. I mean, so it would seem they don't have any plans on implementing like more diffuse samples, less spec, like for GPU. Do you think it's going to continue to have the global AA as like the main sampling control?
Well, I think this would be a good time to get into my criticisms of Arnold GPU, which is the sampling. It is just
Yeah,
because it's sort of brute force throwing samples at everything. It is a little bit slower than I'd like it to be, and it can take a while to resolve to a clean image. And there
sure.
just doesn't seem to be a lot of optimization in that area yet. I know that it's coming, and I know that it's going to be there eventually. But right now, it can be like it kind of feels like you're wasting a lot of samples because you might have a scenario that
Sure.
you're like, wow, I don't understand why this is taking so long. That, and I'll also say that indirect samples in particular, indirect spec and indirect diffuse, are troublesome right now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that might just really be them like implementing a super badass like adaptive sampler, or continuing to build on the the algorithm they're using for the adaptive sampling, and like
Mm-hmm.
which, and I think a lot of this, I wish I knew more about the like coding for GPU side, because I think it's just really kind of a limitation with the way these GPUs are just sending out hundreds of thousands of millions of rays. Like it's kind of just a brute force system, like by the nature of it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they get that to be a little quicker, because we were noticing that the secondary bounces were a little noisier than it felt like they should be, and they like take a while to kind of resolve. But like if you turn off GI and you just run it like with no GI, it's like everything's like real time.
Yeah,
It's
it
fast.
resolves fast. But I gotta say, like, all of them can do that. Like, I've seen
Very true. Yeah.
Octane resolve like crazy fast if you're not doing a lot with it, and the same goes for Redshift. That's sort of like, yeah, okay, that's a given. Like, and that's really the other thing I want to talk about is like, I think the biggest criticism that we're going to see when people start getting their hands on Arnold GPU is that it doesn't feel as fast as Redshift, Octane, and a lot. That's like the number one question people ask me. They're like, "Oh, is it faster than Redshift? Is it faster than Octane?" And I gotta
Yeah.
say, like in some situations, I have found it to be faster, and in other situations, I found it to be slower. It just kind of depends on what you're doing. But I mean, dude, like it's also like so early. Like if you look at the very
Yeah.
beta releases of Redshift and the beta releases of Octane, I think you're not like if you kind of snapshotted where they were when they went to beta for the first time and where they are now. That's a huge amount of improvement that's been made to both of those software.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
we're in the Arnold sort of like lifespan, or I don't know, not lifespan, but state, I guess. We're like at that part where they were a long time ago. So they've got a lot of work to do. It's by no means done, but it's definitely a great first step. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. No, no, I mean, that's why like my initial impressions were like kind of, I was like, whoa, this is pretty impressive. Like things are working I didn't expect to work like out of the gate, at least for me being a later beta tester, with only in the last like month and a half or so. But if they continue at the rate they're going, like I have no doubt that this will kind of, it's gonna be a serious like GPU contender. But then like we have to remember, like, so you have your project, you've got some shots, like maybe you have a bunch of crazy volumetric stuff that just is working better on the GPU. So great. Or sorry, on the CPU, you use the CPU for that shot. And then you have your other shots that are rendering faster on the GPU. So set it to GPU, and having that ability is going to be massive. Like, because you know, I think I still think it's going to be a long time personally before, you know, you have all the features, you know, working, you know, on CPU and GPU, and there's no need to worry about your getting, you know, a crazy CPU anymore. Like I think it's going to be a long time, you know, because if you hop into X particles and do a fluid simulation, like having a 32 core Threadripper comes in really handy, you know. So
Comes in
getting the
handy for a
best,
lot of reasons, really.
yeah, like so getting the best of both worlds, like Arnold running on the CPU and the GPU is huge in my opinion. I think it's
Yeah.
like I said earlier, it's like the holy grail, like render engine. You get both these, you know, functionalities going, and there's really nothing that you can't do.
Yeah, that's a
So
really great point, and I think that I forget who I was talking to. It may have been Trevor Kerr, but he couldn't be here. He's at work. What a chump
oh yeah, we needed to
at
get him
work.
on this thing.
Anyway, but we were talking about it, and one of the reasons that this Arnold GPU is a really compelling product for studios is that you can essentially have artist workstations with, you know, beefed up GPUs doing look dev in Arnold GPU where it makes sense to get that real time feedback, and then
Yep.
send it to a CPU farm, which is way more cost effective than a GPU farm. Plus, there's more options. If you don't have a CPU farm in house, there's cloud options, Pixel Plow, whatnot, that offer cloud rendering on CPU for really cheap, really cheap.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a
Yeah, no,
compelling
there was
argument.
yeah, when Arnold first came out for Cinema 4D, I was doing a ton of projects in it and just sending it all to Pixelplow. Like, you know, I wasn't really too worried about the render times. Like, I was just stoked to have a crazy fast IPR, and so I was doing all my work, you know, here in my studio, and then sending my shots to Pixelplow. But yeah, like you're saying, someone on, let's say, a 8 core, you know, Xeon system that's kind of a little slow for rendering, if it's got 2 Quattro cards in it that, and you know, the company's got 5 of these machines, those are the look dev machines, you know, all the work gets done in Arnold GPU, and then come final render, it's all, they just switch it to CPU, like, and
Yeah.
that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, literally, what I've been doing is I'll set up my render presets, and I'll just have a child preset that switches to GPU and changes or switches back to CPU rather, and changes the samples, so I can
Oh
just
yeah, yeah.
render on my two machines via CPU. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's it's a great workflow. I mean, I gotta think that like studios are gonna love that.
for sure. Well, and you know, the whole render time thing, like I can't but help say, like, you know, we're so spoiled with how quick these engines are anyway. Like I
Yeah,
seriously, like, was just thinking back, like it's only been like in the last like 2 or 3 years, well, maybe 4 years, that I've actually been using like an IPR. Like for me, it was always like I would just set up everything best of my knowledge, and then I'm off to the picture viewer, you know, and I would just iterate through my stuff. And we all know that that was a pretty painful workflow, but like up until recently, like that's what you did. Like so to have Redshift, Octane, Arnold all like working this quick, like it's quite
it's
funny. Like
crazy. We became spoiled so fast, man. Like it just happened overnight where everybody was like, if I have a render that's over 3 minutes, I don't even want to do it. Like it's like, man,
yeah.
dude, we used to have renders that were like an hour a frame.
And then you hear like some shots in like Pixar take like one frame, 32 hours,
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah.
you know, and it's just silly. So, you know, if Arnold GPU ends up being just 15 to 25% slower than Redshift, because maybe just the simple fact that you have Redshift was developed originally to be a CPU or a GPU based renderer,
It's
and Arnold is
biased.
always, yeah, you know, Arnold is always going to have, you know, maybe it's a little tad bit slower, but to me, like just having the ability to switch between both CPU and GPU is worth it alone. Like, you know,
Yeah, people are definitely asking me a lot, like, "Oh, is it as fast as Redshift? Is it as fast as Octane?" And
yeah,
you know, like I said before, sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower. But yeah, even if, like you said, if it's, I can tolerate 10 to 15% slower if I'm getting something else out of it. Like if I'm getting really great UX, I'm getting C4D noises, I'm getting these features, I'm able to render cheaply on the cloud because I can switch to CPU. That's worth it for me. That 10,
yeah,
15% is totally, I'm fine with that. If it were any more, then of course I'd be like, no, I can't even deal. But I think we're gonna see all of them sort of converge within that like 15% difference. I think very depending on what you're doing. Um,
For
yeah,
sure.
I mean it's definitely not gonna be. It's not gonna blow you away in terms of speed the first time you run it, and I think that'll take some time for them to nail the sampling to get it to that like get it on par with like the Octane and Redshift and stuff.
For sure. Yeah, well, and that's really the truth of it. Like most of these engines that feel like crazy fast, they've really got the adaptive sampling like dialed into using these crazy algorithms. Like I know Corona feels crazy fast to me, like on my Threadripper machine, because their adaptive sampling is like awesome. And then their GI is like still a cache based GI, so it's not really, you can switch it over to brute force, but like, you know, Arnold is all brute force everything. And so, well, I guess they implemented the adaptive sampler like what with version 5.
Yeah, but it never really worked the way that it should. And I many times tried to understand when I would want to use it on the CPU version, and I
Yeah,
could never get it to react predictably. And I would say that on CPU, or sorry, on GPU, it does feel better. It feels like I'm actually seeing some benefit. Whereas on
sure. Yeah,
CPU, I didn't really feel like I saw any benefit, especially when you have a Threadripper. But yeah, I was like, okay, yeah, this is actually feeling pretty good. Like, I definitely feel
yeah.
it coming into play now, like using the GPU version. It feels like that's going to be how they're going to tackle the sampling issues. But yeah,
Yeah,
man,
and
it's exciting shit.
yeah, no, it's pretty sweet. It's just like, yeah, all the options we have now, we're very spoiled. And I have, man, you go down the rabbit hole of like, okay, which engine should I use for this or that or the other thing? It's more and more difficult now to decide.
I
So
know.
I,
Ah, it's so hard. I end up just
yeah,
doing like I just was working on a something yesterday, and I started it in Arnold, and then I switched it all to Redshift because it was just going to be easier and faster in there. And like I feel like I do that on every job. Like I build it twice, or if not
oh
three
yeah,
times.
yeah. Or it's sometimes for me too. It's like just out of curiosity. I'm like, okay, this
Mm-hmm.
is looking pretty good, but like it just crashed on me 3 times, so I'm gonna switch over to, you know, in my case, I really have only been using Corona and Arnold mostly lately, so I'm kind of bouncing between those two engines. But yeah, it's awesome that we have all the choices right now. It's kind of crazy. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, did they? I'm gonna look at their article again, because I wanted to make sure I let people know like when they'll be able to use it, and I believe,
I mean, they were
so
saying,
Arnold 5.3 with the GPU public beta is going to be available for download on March 20th, at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it will be available for people that have current standalone subscription or part of a tool in their media and entertainment collection. It sounds like, or you could get a 30-day trial and you'll be able to use it in there as well. So yeah, as of what is that? Oh man, that's in 2 days. I just just
yeah,
realized that.
Wednesday. It's like
Wow.
Christmas for 3D nerds.
Yeah, so yeah, that's pretty rad. So yeah, everybody will be able to try it out and see what it's all about. But yeah, man, I just wanted to jump on this call real quick and go over this with you and just like, nerd out on it for a few minutes.
No, it's exciting stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm stoked. It's gonna be fun.
But before we go, I wanted to mention your monitor blog post on our website.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, so Sean did this awesome monitor blog post on our website. You should go check it out. He broke down, tested out all these monitors, and I bought a monitor, but I didn't buy any of the ones that were in your article.
Of course.
Uh,
Well, I ended up with some strange options. I'll be the first to admit, like I went down a path I did not think I was gonna go, but
yeah, well,
uh,
my old monitor was sort of like acting weird, and I needed more screen real estate. So I read your article, and then I went to LA and stayed with Trevor Kerr at his house. And he had a giant 32-inch monitor that was running at 100%. And I was like, oh my God, I need this in my life. Like, this is amazing. Like, everything is just like in your face, just like huge and amazing. So I went home and I read your article again, and I'm like, well, it sounds like he was really digging in LG. And LG was one of your top picks, right? The LG?
Yeah, I ended up with 2 LG displays to kind of, yeah, yeah, you guys should check it out. It's pretty goofy. I tested out a lot of monitors, and I ended up with 2 LGs, and I do think they just, because they actually manufacture the panels for a lot of these other companies. So if you buy a Dell, like, it actually probably has an LG panel in it. So I don't know, maybe they cherry pick the panels for their own products a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I would if I was them.
Yeah, so, but yeah, that's kind of where I ended up.
Yeah, so I read that, and then I started doing research on 32-inch monitors that weren't 4K because I just do not like how Windows scales on monitors, like the high DPI scaling. I hate that. Like, I'd rather see my
loads
HD.
of programs that don't even work. Like,
I know,
at
and
all.
it's just
Like,
such a drag. I want to see my HD frame big on my screen so I can see any problems or like notice any anomalies. So I wanted a 32-inch monitor that was like 100% and then was also like 2560 by, I don't remember what my res is, but so I ended up getting the LG 32 GK 850G-B32, which is a lot to say, but I'll put it. We'll put it in the link in the show notes. But yeah, it's pretty sick. It's pretty sick. It was $660, I think. And
nice.
Dude, the best thing about it, which I didn't even think about until I heard, till we started talking about monitors and I read your post, was 144 hertz is so good.
Oh yeah, the refresh rates, like, I don't think people realize until you get on a higher refresh rate monitor. It's awesome.
Dude, it's like changing my world right now. Like, I feel like I'm faster. Like, I'm like, oh my God, look how fast I am now. Like, I'm whipping around.
No, well, it's like I don't know, it's going from like 30 FPS to 60 on a camera, and you're like, oh, and then on a monitor going from 60 hertz to 120 or 144. They say you can't actually see it, but you definitely can. Like,
dude, you can feel it. Like, cinema just feels so like smooth and everything's just whipping around. Like, oh man, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, moving all your windows around, like, it does feel so much more fluid. And it's actually, funny enough, that's what drove me to end up buying an iPad. Because the iPad's 120 hertz, I was just like, this thing, I just love the fast refresh rates. And yeah, so
anyway, well, I just thought I'd give you a little shout out on that article, and thank you for inspiring me to get an LG panel with 144 hertz. It's definitely amazing.
Yeah, now you have an excuse to start like gaming too on it.
Oh, dude, no, I don't need
really.
That. I don't need that. I got too much other stuff going on. But anyway, thanks again, dude, for popping on, and thanks everybody for listening. And remember, you'll be able to check out Arnold GPU yourself March 20th, and I look forward to seeing everything you guys make with it.
I know it's going to get crazy.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, and until next time, we will see you around.
See you guys.
Bye.